Great. Welcome to our snow day version of our study session. I take it we're being recorded for later posting, and this is not going up live.
That's correct. It is live. People jump on Zoom here, but we'll post this recording on YouTube and the channel later.
Okay. Okay. So we'll start with the annual board. And well, first off, I guess I should say, if anyone loses power, which is entirely possible, if it really starts coming down heavier, Scott gave us a phone number to call in on. So do plan to call in, and we'll kind of hold things. If we see you disappear, we'll hold for a few minutes. Okay, so annual board and committee recruitment process, and that one's with Scott and Nicole.
Thank you, Mayor Beatty and Council. It's great to be with you virtually. I'm having a bit of flashbacks to a couple of years ago, how we survived, and I'm glad that we have this capability to do that. So good to be with you. We have an update on our annual board and committee recruitment, and then just a little ask for input from Council on that process. So while I'm doing this, I'm also paying attention to the panelist list. Nicole and Ann, I made you co-hosts of this meeting. If you could, Emma, I will make you a co-host as well too. If y'all can admit folks, staff who come in. I don't think we have an audience from the public at this point, but anyway, I'm going to share my screen and that'll make it harder to see you all and also see anyone in that waiting room or in the panelist, the non-panelist part of the meeting. Anyway, so like I said, we are just days away from the launch of our third annual board and committee recruitment, and we wanted to share with Council that proposed schedule and get a little feedback. And before I launch into that, and especially as I can't see her before I forget, Nicole, do you want to say hello real quick?
Yes, hi, Nicole Madigan, Deputy City Recorder. Glad to be here, ready to get the recruitment period started. Woo!
Thank you, Nicole. I should say at the top that this process the last 2 years has been the heart and soul of it has been Nicole, and so I really greatly appreciate her legwork and her work in our office in general, but in this process in particular. So as a very brief refresher, the city has 11 standing boards and committees ranging from the Arts Committee to the Tree Board and all things in between. That roughly spells out, it's in the staff report, it's like 86, around 86 to 90 volunteers on those 11 boards and committees. Before 3 years ago, we would do ad hoc recruitment and interview processes, meaning when any of those positions became vacant or the terms ended, we would do an ad hoc recruitment interview process. The council 3 or 4 years ago thought we should move to an annual recruitment process, and so we've done that 2 or 3 times. We've learned a lot of lessons. I'm feeling perhaps the most optimistic going into this cycle based on what we learned the first 2 years, and I think we've given ourselves plenty of time to go through each of the steps. But we have 11 boards and committees. Looking as of right now, and these numbers can change based on what our volunteers may decide to resign or different things like that. We have 38 positions that need to be filled or refilled by reappointment by the end of June when terms expire. In the staff report, I won't list every single one of those. In the staff report, there was a graph, a table that Nicole and I put together that shows all 11 and what committees have vacancies and what committees have positions that are terming out at the end of the year. I will say, I feel like only 2 open vacancies currently is fairly low for us. I feel like in the past, it's been kind of a standing 3 or 4 vacancy, but we only have 2. And one of those is an NDA nominated position on the Public Safety Advisory Committee. So I think in terms of our board and committees, we're in pretty good spot. And then, so that means 36 are positions that are terming out. And for that, we work through our staff liaisons. Each committee or board has a staff liaison. We ask them to check with the folks who are terming out or have terms up to see if they're eligible and want to be reappointed. We have not done that yet. So not to say that we will have 36 completely open and without an incumbent positions to fill, but there are 36 positions whose terms end this year. So we're looking at about 38 positions. Our timeline, this is more or less what we did last year. But there's a layer that has been taken out, and that is we're not going to do the Spark hire this year. We've done, and the Spark hire, for those who might not be familiar, is a video interview tool. You can preload introductory and outgoing video messages, and then 3 questions, and then applicants can film 60-minute responses to each of the questions, and then the interview panel can review those videos and make decisions about next steps and appointments and things like that. We did that in the last 2 years. I would say overall, I think we found to be a fairly mixed bag in terms of the effectiveness of the Spark hire round of interviews. Certainly, when you have bigger numbers, it makes a lot of sense to whittle it down. And there were certain times, certain applicants where we did feel like it was an accessibility boost, having somebody who perhaps wasn't as good at writing their answers, giving them an opportunity to verbally express their answers. I think we did get that feedback that was beneficial, and members of the panels appreciated being able to review those videos on their own time. But overall, it was it added a layer that kind of complicated things and made a lot of work on the back end for staff. And also the city's diminished, and I don't know if we even subscribe to Spark Hire anymore, in terms of we were using it through the Human Resources Department, and I don't think we use that anymore. So for those reasons, Spark Hire is not a part of this, which in some ways makes it a more cleaner schedule. So the proposal that Nicole and I are bringing to council today is that we will open the application period, which means anybody can apply to any of our boards and committees, regardless of vacancy or not, beginning February 1st. We'll do our usual social media and a citywide postcard and pilot article, and then word of mouth, and mention at council meetings. We'll do the usual recruitment process there between February 1st and April 1st. Then we'll close it on the 1st of April. Then we'll triage them, make sure that folks are eligible and whatnot, and then get council a chance to look at those applications by April 8th. And then that'll give us a few weeks for council to give us back some notes and to work with the liaisons and the board and committee chairs to schedule interviews for the end of April and May 1st. And then based on how that first round interviews go, if we need to schedule second round interviews, we can do so between the 13th and 15th of May. And then hopefully by the end of May, we're in pretty good position to have a slate of folks to have council appoint via the consent agenda on June 4th. So we built in plenty of time. We feel like between these deadlines, to make sure staff has a chance to get what we need to get done, and then have council an opportunity to look everything over and give them their feedback as well. To prefetch before I move on to the questions, Nicole, do you want to add anything to any of this?
Yeah, so we've also, of course, had open positions on our youth committee positions on our 3 boards and committees, the Arts, Library, and PARB. We have made efforts, lots of varied efforts to recruit. We have had, actually recently we've had an applicant. We have two other applicants who had previously applied, and we hadn't moved forward yet with anything, just letting them kind of know that we're in a standstill until we had more applicants. But we are actually working with Jesselyn at the library, who runs the Teen Advisory Board, and myself. They meet also on Tuesday evening. So myself and Suzanne from the city manager's office have been working with Scott and Emma to formulate some kind of loose-based conversation questions to bring to that group to get their feedback on how to best get youth engagement on city boards and committees. So that was supposed to happen last month. We had to reschedule to tonight, which got canceled because of the weather. So I'm hoping that we'll be meeting with them next month. Fingers crossed on that.
And in addition, for an update on this front, but also for the outstanding student, which we haven't done this school year for Milwaukie High, I'm in playing phone tag right now with Principal Kellogg, but we had agreed to let the school get caught up on some things, and then we were going to revisit them this year. And so I'm going to be speaking with Principal Kellogg tomorrow, and we'll see where that program is too. So thank you, Nicole. Ann?
I just wanted to mention, because it had come up at the council retreat, we did have a conversation, Scott and I did, about some alternative ways that the principal could engage with our students and the council. So those will be a part of the discussion tomorrow. Thanks.
Indeed. With that being all said, my first question to council is, I'll leave it on this slide for the moment. Does this schedule and timeline seem reasonable, feasible? Does this look good? Does council want to make any tweaks to this schedule as laid out?
Any counselors have any problems with any of the schedule? I'm seeing a thumbs up from,
I have a question, Mayor.
sure, go for it.
I know that in the past, with youth appointments, there's been a partial year that they participate in, so they traditionally don't participate over the summer, I think. Is this like, would they align with this time frame, or would the youth participants maybe have a different timeline?
At this stage, Nicole and I, basically, the short answer is we're open to whatever makes the most sense. And so we do have the couple candidates. We want to have a good conversation with the library team advisory board. If that becomes an independent process and it slides into the summer and we get them appointed in the fall, or we propose to council to get appointed in the fall, then we'll make it work with that timeline. And if we find ourselves that we're scheduling interviews and we've got a couple of youth applicants to have council interview or panels interview, then I think we go with what makes the most sense. And in terms of summertime and students sort of being busier at the season, I will say anecdotally, I think we found that adults similarly tend to disappear in the summer. So I wouldn't see it as necessarily anything to be overly concerned about in terms of, even if they're appointed in June and they don't start showing up till September. I think we all want to make this work. We want to make be as accommodating as we can to our students, to our youth. So kind of TBA, still fleshing it out, but I wouldn't see this timeline as necessarily being a hindrance.
Okay, that's helpful. And in the interview process, would youth also go through the, there's like a step where applicants set up their video response to questions and things along those lines. I can't remember the name of the system that we use. But I know last time during the recruitment, I was talking with a couple of young people who had applied and they got to that step and they said, well, I don't want to make a video. And then they dropped out. So how are we communicating that whole process to young people?
This year, we're not, that was the Spark Hire interview round. And we're not doing that this year at all. So at this stage, and this is something that council give us feedback on right now too, if you have a thought on it, but we're thinking the first round would probably be Zoom interviews, just because of the ease of access and folks generally know how to use Zoom. But if there's an interest in scheduling some in person or offering in person for those who applicants who would like to prefer to be in person, I think we're open to that. But we're not doing the Spark Hire round, so there'll be no video recording, and the instructions, we will give instructions to applicants and the interview panels like we have before, but it will be less complicated. There'll be no video recording.
Okay, thank you.
If we have youth that are interested now, I'd like to do interviews for them now. I'd like to try and plug them into a committee sooner rather than later, so that they do get a few months of it before summer break. So I would say in the meetings you're going to have at the library and discussions with the principal, I mean, let's look at trying to do something in, February, just limited to youth. Because I hate to hold those over to, especially if you've had a couple for a while, I hate to hold them up till summer, and appointing them in summer, appoints them in the time when they may not be able to participate. So I'd kind of like to move youth on a different track and try and move it a little more expeditiously. Because it's been so long since we've had youth interested that I think we need to take advantage of that.
Absolutely. I think we can arrange that. I think there is a natural point coming, especially once they get to talk to the tab. So, but we can absolutely move that forward. And if in the name of expediency, since that's what the direction we're getting, which is great. We've generally had council interview panels that have consisted of the board liaison and the committee chair, the board and committee chair, the board liaison, and then 2 members of council, and often that's been the mayor and then 1 other member of council. So if we were to schedule youth, and this is all subject to schedules too, we'd work around whoever it is. Mayor Beatty, would you like to be on those panels? And then who else from council would like to be on youth interview panels in February? See Councilor Stavanger raise their hand. Is that for the panel?
Yes, please.
And she does have some travel in February, so get those dates and try and work it around her travel schedule.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alternately, I could also support youth, getting them kind of comfortable with the idea of the interview panel. So if the mayor wants to be on the panel or another counselor wants to be on the panel, I'd be happy to be involved in some prep work for youth, so that the intimidation of going through a process like this is kind of lessened.
So noted. Thank you. All right. Well, we've got the makings of a panel to put together, Nicole. We'll work on that. Great.
And as to these dates, I am currently not expecting to be here April 29th to May 1st.
Oh.
I'm expecting to get back in town about May 3rd. But those plans are not entirely firmed up. But I guess I'd like to throw out there the idea, and this is something council did one year, which was Saturday interviews, as opposed to a weeknight.
I think we looked at Saturdays, but this is also in the heart of budget season, and a number of your Saturdays are already scheduled.
Okay.
So we can piggyback right after that, but we didn't want to overload anyone's schedule. Nicole and I can take a look at the maybe we could cite it earlier or later.
Well, I think it'd have to be later, probably, because
later into May 3rd.
Yeah, that
Okay.
next week probably.
Okay, that shouldn't be a problem.
And I will just note, even though we have this number 36 right now, or 38, I mean, that's probably the similar number that terms are up every year, and usually at least half and sometimes 2/3 are re-upping. So it's not going to be that many slots to interview for, I think. Which brings me to another point I wanted to raise, which is, I know it's kind of early to ask the current members if they want to re-up. But I do feel like it would be better for the applicants if we had a realistic sense of that. For example, last year we had 10 applicants for the library board and no openings. The library board I see has 3 people, and just looking on board, I can't tell. I mean, it tells you who they are, but I can't tell if it's their second term or not. So I don't know to what degree they'd all be able to re-up. But I guess I feel like it would be, more user-friendly to the applicants, and also get us getting people to apply where there are vacancies, if we can somehow try to narrow down who's going to extend and who's not.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead, Nicole.
It's on my list to run that report in the next week or so. This week I have a couple of other time sensitive things that have to happen, but it is definitely on my radar. And I think last year I sent it out around the same time as well. It's trying to get trying to get the people to respond to the liaison in a timely fashion. And some people are like, well, I need time to think about it. So we usually do have an idea, but like Scott had mentioned earlier, even if there isn't an opening on that board, we do accept applications on all of it, which I think is part of the problem that we ran into on the library board, which is maybe something we want to talk about if we want to close applications if there isn't a vacancy. I don't know if that's something that we've done before, but
Well, the silver lining of having applications on deck though is that should something open up after the appointments are made and after July 1, then we have that alternate list to pull from.
right.
And the library, in the last 3 years, the library has been the far and away most popular thing for people to apply for.
Right. And so maybe it's just, I mean, yeah, there is value to having the list to go back to. Maybe it's just putting some language in either in the application or in the text that accompanies the application that says something like certain committees have few vacancies and lots of applicants, so please consider applying for more than one committee or something like that. I mean, just some, because we had quite a few of those 10 library applicants who were library only.
Mhm.
You know, and I went and asked some of them, would you be interested in considering this or that committee? But I mean, maybe just trying to put some language in that sort of makes that point.
Great. Anything else on the dates? So that first round interviews, we'll take a look at that and see if we can slide away from those dates, but and probably later into May. But we have built plenty of time into this, so. If there are no other questions on that, I do have one more question. So the first one I already asked about. The second note there. So for board and committee interviews for the panels, we've kind of done both. So we wanted to get feedback without being specific to which questions. We've gone the model of each board and committee panel, each interview for each board and committee has specific questions for the planning commission or for the library board. They're questions fairly well tailored to the content of that board or committee. But we've also in recent years, council's expressed an interest in having some general citywide questions. And we have examples of that that we can draw from. So without getting necessarily into specific questions, we want to know, does council want us to stick with questions for the interview panel specific to the committee? Or do you want to do general questions or perhaps a mix, or any feedback on those questions?
Councilor Stavengerd has her hand up.
I think that there should be at least one general question, and I know that you're not entertaining specifics right now, Scott, but I think that a question around equity would be very important to have across all the committees.
Although that is on the application. So the difference is interviews versus application.
Well, and would it be okay to have it on both?
It'd be okay. I don't know that it's needed, but it would be okay. Sure. Councilor Khosrabadi?
Yeah, just to clarify, so this is specific to interviews, right? The interview questions okay. I just wanted to clarify that. I think there should be general questions. I mean, I think there should be more tailored to the BC specific, but I do think there should be maybe one or two questions that are general, just to get an idea of where they see this intertwines with city, initiatives or where the city's vision is. I think it would be helpful to have that info, to ask that and have that info.
Well, I would just point to WS14, which is the application everybody will do, right?
Yep.
So it asks about your life experiences that led you to this point, your qualifications and skill set, and how do you support the equity, inclusion, and justice goal. So what's the other question you're suggesting? You did suggest something else and I didn't capture it.
Are you asking Counselor Kosarvati?
Yeah.
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 Oh, no, it was just in general. I mean, it wasn't really a specific question. Just a question more tailored to, you know, the city's vision. Um, you know, but it kind of sounds, I mean, those are actually really good questions, but because equity is part of the vision, but maybe, I mean, just overall in general, but I kind of like those questions actually too. So I don't want to make more work where it's not needed.
Yeah, I will say, having done both over the years, I mean, I think it's a useful exercise to let the chair of the committee and the staff liaison weigh in on the questions for the committee. Counselor Massey?
Thank you. I'm going to get in the weeds a little bit, so bear with me here. In looking at the application, that very first question, I think to me, it's a little bit limiting. And quite frankly, it puts pressure on people, because tell us about yourself and how your life experience led you to serving on a city board or committee. Whereas I think the question, a more appropriate sort of general question is, why are you interested? And we can include this thing about life experiences, and, you know, include life experiences if that's, you know, if you'd like to add that. But when I read that question, to me, that just puts a lot of pressure. Oh, gee, I got to come up with some, you know, wonderful story about my life, or some quote from my grandfather or something like that. And I think the question should be more like, why are you interested in this position, rather than this, which I think is sort of leading them to, you know, a certain kind of answer.
Yeah, I see that point. I do see that point.
Mayor, I don't know, your memory might be a little bit better, but I thought we had adapted that question from something else. We were trying to give applicants an opportunity to talk about what qualifies them for the position. Do you remember that first iteration of the questions?
I don't, but I mean, the next question goes to qualifications, right? I mean, I do think the first one is more about why are you applying? Yeah.
Yeah, and about lived experience, which gets to your diversity or representation, how you identify, and somebody might not feel comfortable putting that on an application. So maybe something like that, where it's more open-ended, would be better suited as one of the overarching interview questions, so they get a chance to respond in person.
So I'm not sure I understand what kind of question you're suggesting. So you're suggesting a question for the interview panels.
What I remember poorly is that first question was a different question to begin with, and we redid the questions. And I remember former council president Nicodemus and I having some discussion. I'm sorry, it doesn't come to mind right now, the specifics, but I could look back through my notes. And I know that we had adapted that first question so that it had a more open opportunity for folks to talk about their lived experience and how that has led them on the path to be on the committee now. So I mean, I understand what Councilor Massey is saying, but I'm hesitant to either remove that one or modify it without having the history of the changes that we made.
I see Counselor Kosarvati has his hand raised too.
Right.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Yeah, I remember that vaguely. Rebecca, actually, you, Counselor Savinger, you actually refreshed my memory there, but I do remember, because it had to do something with you're right, the way it was worded, and I think it's important to keep that in, because also the very next question, the qualifications, some might assume that might be like, oh, do I have a degree in this? You know, have I served on this board before? But like, for example, for when I applied for planning commission, I didn't know a lot of land use, but I knew about housing instability, right? And that was a lived experience. So I think it helps because some people may look at qualifications and think like, oh, I don't have any certifications or anything like that. And I felt like the lived experience gave us another lens to look through, as opposed to just, so if somebody didn't have the maybe qualifications or exact skill set, but still wanted to serve on that board, their lived experience would qualify them. But yeah, I think that's pretty much where
And so would you keep that lived experience question here, or would you put, I mean, I do think there's something more typical to saying, why are you applying for this? You know, why do you want to do this? So would you have that be the question in the written and have the lived experience be the question in the oral, or vice versa? Counselor Massey?
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that that the lived experience be removed completely. My proposal was that the question begins like, why are you interested in this? Or why has your lived experience led you to serving on a city or board? I mean, you can combine those two things. But I think just having this as well, tell us about your lived experience and why it's coming up there. I just think that's leading people to a sort of, a kind of answer, whereas they may not have, some great story to tell about their life. They just may say, I read about this and I'm interested in doing it, and that's okay.
I just put a proposal in the chat that says, tell us about yourself. What interests or life experiences have led you to serving on a city board or committee? And, that way, if you are a master gardener, but you didn't grow up in a garden, then you can still include those interests.
And Counselor, that's for the oral, or is that for the application form?
I would say for the oral.
Oral, okay.
Well, I don't know. I guess it could be either. I don't mind either way.
I will just note, I don't want to curtail the conversation, but we are almost 20 minutes over on this item, and I know that I've got colleagues waiting. So I think this is great. If you have more thoughts, if council has more thoughts on questions, please email Nicole and I. Again, not whole council, but individually email Nicole and I, and we will work on including those. We do have time until the interview panels happen.
I
yeah.
do like this. I do like Counselor Stavenger's wording as the opening question for the interview itself, but making the opening question of the application be more about why are you interested in this board? Yeah.
We can work on those two things, and I will share things as they're updated. But any other thoughts on the board and committee recruitment? Come February 1st, hopefully you'll start to see more from us, and I hope you help spread the word as council has before, and recruiting. And with that, I will stop talking and say thank you.
All right, and then we'll turn things over to Emma and Dan to talk to us about summer events.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let me get the screen share up. First one. All right, is that showing in full screen? So one thumbs up. I think we're good. Okay. Thanks so much for having us. We'll try to make this quick to try to get you a little bit back on schedule. But we figured it's a frigid day with freezing rain coming out. Let's think about summer. Let's think about all the fun we're going to have in the sunshine like this beautiful picture evokes. So Dan and I are here to do a few things. We are hot in budget season. We are rolling up our sleeves, getting our proposed budgets ready. And for the strategic engagement team in the city manager's office, that a big chunk of that is the events that the city puts on every year for our community. And what we try to do every year, we don't want this to become stale, and we don't want to just do the same old for the same old reasons. We also always want to improve. So we're in the process of weighing up priorities for that annual event program, looking at what's worked, what didn't, and kind of considering inputs we've received throughout the previous biennium to inform what we plan for in the next one. And just as some context, when I say our annual event program, the signature events that the city puts on, so going from beginning of the year to the end of the year, it starts with Earth Day in the spring. Then it goes to Carefree Sunday in the summer, and that is now on a biannual cadence based on some of the things we're going to talk about in a little bit. The next one would be Arbor Day, and then we have a busy December with the Umbrella Parade at the solstice. We also support a lot of other community events throughout that calendar, but those are the big ones that it's us paying for, putting on, leading, staffing, all those things. So what we're really here tonight to ask you is what you think we should be budgeting for in our proposed budget. I mentioned that we try to keep our ears open for what the community is telling us they want more of or less of. And recent discourse, and I'll kind of share a few specific examples in a second, but has highlighted a few things. One, we're hearing a lot of calls to bring back Milwaukie Days. Now, Milwaukie Days was never a city event. It was put on by volunteers, but I don't think the average Milwaukeean who remembers it knows that. And it was a beloved thing. The exact dates, Dan can correct me on, but I mean, it was running for 3 decades, I believe, and was something that people really associate with the city. The other thing that we're hearing a lot of is we'd like to see more sort of smaller scale or multicultural events in neighborhoods throughout the year. We're getting kind of more increased calls for support, whether it's financial or staffing at those. And also just hearing from partners and from surveying that people just would like to have a little bit more going on. So we're considering ways we can, as a city, support that. And then finally, last kind of piece of context, you guys all know we're in a tight budget year. So the direction that's been given to staff is to hold the line. So we are not expanding our budget. I can't make my events budget grow bigger. So we have to make some choices and consider some trade-offs, which is what we wanted to talk to you about early on, because even if the event happens in the summer, the planning starts right now. So specifically on this Milwaukie Days question, I wanted to share some of the things we've been hearing and we've been thinking about as staff as to why reimagining or bringing this back might be a good idea. And then Dan's going to talk a little bit about sort of what our pitch would be for what the event could look like. The first thing we've been hearing a lot from folks is we're kind of event heavy in the latter half of the year, and particularly in the winter. There's not a signature event that happens in the summer. And I think that is something that when people think of community and nostalgia and bringing people together in the good weather, there's a desire for that. So, and we like that too. It would space some things out for us as a desire for that summer milestone. I mentioned those consistent calls to bring it back. So this is coming up in the open-ended comments of our community survey and just kind of more smaller scale surveys we've been doing. The Keene Equity Study, which did some community outreach, Milwaukie Days was brought up as honestly as an equity strategy, as a way to celebrate the heritage of the community and also the changing and diverse identity of the community. And this sort of place to say, we are Milwaukie, we are inclusive, we are diverse, here we are. And then the third place, you've heard me drone on and on about our staff strategic plan, but it was really interesting how many staff members remember this. And we're like, that'd be so cool if we brought that back. That would be a really great thing to get us all energized. And then the third thing we see here, and so I don't want to bury this lead, and I hope it came through in the staff report, we have a tight budget. And the biggest event we put on right now, the most expensive event we put on is Carefree Sunday. It's a wonderful event. I came from Peabot, so the home of Sunday Parkways. I love it. And it's expensive to close streets and do that programming for an open streets event. We feel like we need $43,000. That's what it's cost in the past to do this. And that's why we moved to that biannual basis. We couldn't afford a $43,000 event every year. If we moved to something like a Milwaukie Days, a scale where we'd still be closing some streets, but we wouldn't be closing a broad network of streets, that would shrink the budget quite considerably. And Dan will talk a little bit about what we're projecting for this. But so if we did Milwaukie Days and did not do future Carefree Sundays, we would have the chance to do some strategic reallocation within the events budget. I'm going to hand it to Dan to do lightning round pitch on what Milwaukie Days could look like, and then we'll discuss. Over to you, Dan.
Thanks very much, Emma. So event goals, I mean, you see them there: embrace and celebrate Milwaukee's diverse identity, what it was, what it is, what it could and will be. We want to continue to activate that public right-of-way and park spaces, and then also to develop a signature summer event with Carefree Sunday now shifted to the fall and then potentially moved out of and then if this does move forward, sort of moved off the calendar altogether, this would be something in the summer that Milwaukeeans can come together on and celebrate as a community. If I could get the next slide, please. Logistics and parameters would be looking at the last weekend in July. This would be about a 1.5, potentially stretching into 2 days spread over 3 days kind of event. We'd be picturing having some kind of attractions beginning Friday evening, a full day on Saturday, and then if we were able to get a community partner who wanted to host maybe some sort of a pancake breakfast or something in conjunction with the Sunday Farmers Market, the Milwaukie Farmers Market, which will be in the height of its season then, we could sort of extend those into a weekend-long festivity. This would be, our thought is that this would be held downtown, recognizing that there is that east-west divide with 224. This would be a signature event downtown, but as Emma noted in her presentation, with an event that is slightly more congruent with the size of other events that the city puts on, that would free up funding for additional support for equity events, for community events, for other events that are ongoing or that could be hosted on the east side. I'd be looking at closing sections of Main Street, so you still get some of that Plaza Street, some of that right-of-way activation. The activities that we have listed here are examples. The ones with the asterisks next to them are things that we would be looking for sponsorship candidates to get behind. And I think that this is something that there's a lot of appetite for. As Emma said, there's a lot of excitement around it. And I think that I think we're well positioned to work on recruiting sponsors. Overall, we do think that we could put on a good event for about $10,000, and then we would be seeking about $5,000 in direct sponsorships, as well as other opportunities for in-kind sponsorships. Emma has really helpfully given the example of the bowl and the ice cream, and I think she'll come to that a little bit later. But we think of these non-asterisk events as sort of the ice cream, and then everything else would be the sprinkles and the cherry and the hot fudge or cherry pie, as it were, if we look at one of those options there. I think that is the end of mine. Oh, it's not at all. All right. So with that, we do recognize that there are some risks. The chief among those, it's not what it used to be. People have ideas about what Milwaukie Days is and what Milwaukie Days isn't, and we've heard everything from it just wouldn't be Milwaukie Days without a firefighter muster, which is not something that I think anybody is ruling out, but just not necessarily a primary piece of programming. To it wouldn't be Milwaukie Days without the rides, it wouldn't be Milwaukie Days without the fireworks. But when we talk about that past, present, future idea, we're looking for ways to celebrate Milwaukie as it is now and the things that make this city special. I think that an event can evolve over time, can change over time, and particularly since this was last held over a decade ago, there's a lot of opportunity here. There are some other summer conflicts. There's limited time to plan, which I would say is equally true for Carefree Sunday, really. In the future, we could run into construction conflicts downtown. This year, that's a possibility as well. And we would need to get volunteers on board for it. But that being said, there is a lot of community energy around this. It's an opportunity to reimagine this classic event. And the more that we hear about excitement around urban renewal, excitement around economic development, particularly in the downtown area, this is a good opportunity to really activate some of that space. And I really do want to underline the opportunity here to provide additional funding and support to these community events, these equity events, what are sometimes referred to as like heritage festivals, in addition to this. So it's not Carefree Sunday or Milwaukie Days, it's Carefree Sunday or Milwaukie Days and additional support for community events throughout the year. I think now that actually is it. So I will turn it back to Emma.
Thanks, Dan. This is our last slide, folks. So Again, we wanted to get on the agenda early in the year, because whatever direction you give us, we start tomorrow. We start, whether it's proceeding with the calendar of events we've got today and making sure we pull off Carefree in a great way, or it's pivoting and doing Milwaukie days. So again, the kind of question we have for you is, would you rather see we continue our current events program? We deliver those signature events. We do a biannual Carefree Sunday, and we continue to have limited funding available for some community-led multicultural celebrations. But just so for your awareness, that's been in the realm of like $500 for Pride or $500 for Juneteenth. Or are you excited by this proposal, and would you like to see us pivot this way? Do signature events, adding in an annual summer Milwaukie Days event, and then increasing with the savings, we would see increasing funding available for some other multicultural celebrations. So we'd increase the funding for Pride and Juneteenth, and then we would anticipate that we'd have more capacity available as those other community-led events kind of pop their heads up and look for support. And then again, just last kind of things to consider. Sorry, the screen sharing thing is in front of my bullet, so I can't read it. There we go. Dan already mentioned this one, but we totally know we need to pound the pavement and hit the ground running on fundraising, and we're really excited about that and energized about that. And we want to make sure that we're budgeting for the core event costs, so we don't get into a risk of having to cancel an event because we didn't meet a fundraising goal or because a partner has to back out. So that's the bowl, that's the ice cream. The bowl and the ice cream need to be funded, and then the sprinkles and the hot fudge and the cherry is what we would want to fundraise for. And then the last thing I want to say is, we really, again, back to my PBOT roots, the value of activating right-of-way and celebrating active transportation is hugely important. It's aligned with our vision and our climate goals. We do think there are ways to do that through other events. Our park openings this fall is a great example, or even as part of Milwaukie Days, one of the activities we talked about was maybe some suggested bike routes that someone could take and make a day of it. But I do want to be really, really honest that an open streets event, the full scale Sunday parkways or Cicla de Via, where you close a whole network of streets, that's where that price really jacks up. So we don't want to imply that we can do a Sunday parkways or a Carefree Sunday light. We really do want the direction on which of these you'd like us to take, so that we can really deliver events that we and you can be proud of. We've talked a lot. I'm going to breathe. And we would love to hear what your thoughts are.
I have a couple of questions. One is the late November was often Milwaukie Days. I mean, I guess probably no one, Councilor Savage maybe has been to a Milwaukie Days before, but everyone else is newer to the community because it hasn't happened in 12 or 13 years. But it often happened on the late July weekend, like you're suggesting. They did play around with dates. They had a few years where that was an untenably hot weekend, and it was a horrible event. And so they played with going to late June. They played with the date a little bit, but that was generally their date. Why are you not having the same concerns about summer dates that you had for Carefree Sundays?
I'm going to let Dan take this one, but I'll just say, Mayor, I mean, we talked about this morning. It's a great question, and Dan, jump in there.
Thanks very much, Emma, and thank you, Mayor Beatty. Yeah, it's a real concern. I have the exact same concern about this as I do about Carefree Sunday, as I do about any event in the late summer, which is why we had previously discussed moving Carefree Sunday earlier in the year. Council's direction has been to move it to September. With this, I think the difference is that we do still get those livable, pleasant summer days. And with Carefree Sunday, you're taking a $43,000 gamble that we don't hit a heat dome or an early heavy rainstorm or whatever else. With this, it's $10,000. And I think that's a bit more manageable. It's also annual. So if we do get a bad year, if we do get a rough year, chances are good that the next year we will be able to do the event. Whereas with Carefree Sunday right now, the situation is you do it every other year. If it goes bad one year, all right, well, we'll try again in 700 some odd days. And I just, I think that's the difference. This is something that's at a scale that we can do annually, and there is risk there. You're absolutely right, but it's just a smaller risk.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to pretend that if it's unhealthy heat, we're having anyone come out. But say it's in the high 80s or the low 90s. I think with a slightly smaller footprint event too, there's a better opportunity for for providing shade and misting tents and things like that we could kind of more on the fly plan for. Whereas, as Dan said, you unfortunately get to, I think, a bigger risk of having to pull the whole plug with an open streets event.
Counselor Stavanger just posted something to the chat. What is that, Counselor Stavanger?
I put a link in there to the bike map that's on the city webpage. I'm just wondering, this was published in 2017. So I'm wondering if this is the most accurate version that we have, and if there might be some way, looking at kind of routes, the green routes, where we could encourage folks to still bike safely, with traffic, but under 25 miles an hour. And then maybe work with volunteers in, like, it looks like there might be maybe an orange or a yellow sort of area kind of crossing into downtown or wherever we might end up holding Milwaukie Days.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I'm wondering, if there are ways that we can still encourage bike transit to the event by highlighting some of these routes that are in existence in the city.
Yeah, I think that's an idea that we've kicked around. We've got some real bike enthusiasts on our team too, who are really passionate about that. I think that kind of, suggested route or guided route using neighborhood greenways could be great. Again, I think there's opportunity not even just with Milwaukie Days. I think when we have our neighborhood park openings, there could be a similar thing of, hey, make a day of it. But yeah, it's the difference between saying we're going to staff, an entire route, close the streets, maintain all those intersections versus kind of a more encouragement campaign to use our existing infrastructure in the way that it is.
Well, and I guess I'm also, there are a lot of folks that are here in the community that are bike enthusiasts and they bike with traffic all the time. So I wonder if there's some kind of a model of like the bike school bus that we could adopt, that we have like 2 or 3 volunteer leaders and almost like a bike shuttle bus that goes, to the event and from the event, so that folks that have a little bit of apprehension biking in traffic would still have a safe, kind of critical mass to do so.
Mm-hmm. I love the idea. And again, I think if depending on the direction we get today, tomorrow we start making phone calls. Well, maybe not tomorrow. People are still cleaning up from an ice storm, but soon we start making phone calls. And I think I would love to unleash kind of community passion and excitement in various ways around this event.
Councilor Khosrowshahi had his hand up first, I believe.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, staff, for the presentation. Although it is sad to see that Carefree would have to be sacrificed for the event, I am leaning towards favoring this just because of what it opens up for other events. I mean, we're kind of hitting 2 of the things that the public is asking for, right? And increasingly asked for: more multicultural events. Also bringing back Milwaukie Days. So I do like that. I would like to put for the culinary corridor, it would be nice to see, if we can work with the food cart pods down there and those vendors to incorporate them as part of that culinary corridor, because then you don't have to really worry too much about further fundraising because they're already there.
Yeah,
and it helps business down that way, because I know, being a former food cart owner down there, it was tough with the city events not being closer to bring some of that business down there. But with all this said, I do have a question: has there been, maybe this was brought up in a previous slide, but has there been any discussion with any members of the public that Carefree Sunday might have to go, and like any of with the individuals that are asking for to bring back Milwaukie Days? Has there been a discussion like, hey, you're going to lose this? And if there has been a discussion, what has been the response from the public?
Thank you for the question. It's a great one. And I have not had those conversations, Dan. If you let me know if you feel differently. I think we really wanted to start with you, before going and setting any expectations or sowing any concerns in the community. Because again, we want to follow your direction here. If it's a clear, stay the course, we will happily do that and deliver a great, carefree. But we wanted to have this conversation here first. I think that kind of stakeholder engagement is definitely a next step. But I do feel like we need to sort of get an answer here today so that we can proceed with A, budget development, and B, planning for 2024, and then use that stakeholder engagement to make sure whatever we're delivering meets the needs and the expectations of the community as best we can.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Counselor Massey?
Yeah, I think I know the answer to this, but I need to clarify. The staff is proposing to do this year.
We are.
Okay, that's a big course change, and I guess I just going back to the carefree experience from last year, with the fundraising and everything like that. This is I'm surprised it's less than Carefree Sunday. I mean, it's kind of it's hard to get my arm around about what it really is, but it seems like there's a lot of moving parts here. And so, I mean, how was the $15,000 price tag arrived at?
Yeah, it's again, great question. This event could scale up and become a lot more expensive. And if we did everything on that list, it's going to be a lot more expensive and we would have to fundraise out the yin yang. What we are confident we can do is using our great assets downtown and on the waterfront and the ingenuity and kind of gritty creativity of our team and folks at the city beyond our team who are really excited about this. We feel like we could deliver a really fun event that is similar to sort of an umbrella parade expanded. So the budget kind of comes from that. We know what it takes to put on umbrella parade. We know what it takes to put on solstice. Add a little bit more into that. Add some vendors. Add maybe the Porch Fest connection to the Friday night, and do a little bit more, and the culinary corridor. Like it'll get up to that 10,000. But 10,000 is going to be a pretty fun and gritty and bare bones summer event. And then I think we would really want to fundraise hard for those sprinkles and build on it for future years. I think you also look at things like the Bing in the New Year success, where you have thousands of people, did we say 1,000? I don't know. We said a lot coming down for an event that did not cost very much money. And we now have a really cool light up cherry that if the Arts Committee lets us use it, we could use it again. So I think that we used our experience and the costing of previous events to come up with that ballpark. You're right, it's lean. You're right, it's a short turnaround. But my team's excited about this. So if you are too, we can make it happen.
Thank you. It's a great idea. I just want to make sure that we can pull it off.
Sure.
If I could please add to that, Counselor, every other event that this team produces costs between $8,000 and $10,000. And so to Emma's point, absolutely, it's going to be a bit pared down. But if we're not talking about hiring a consultant to close down streets and that taking more than half the budget, what we're really trying to get to is a place where we can deliver the ice cream every year when we say we can, as opposed to, well, I sure do hope this happens. It's that consistency we're looking for.
Thank you.
Counselor Stavanger?
Thank you. I couldn't find the goose icon, so I just raised my hand again. Just a couple of rapid fire thoughts. I think that if we were to move forward with the school bus bike ideas, it would be helpful to brainstorm potential stipends for those volunteers, because they would be feasibly, kind of running that route throughout the course of the day, or we'd have to manage a number of volunteers. So just a thought there. Second, I was thinking back to the new business presentation from that one vintage shop. And they said that they were interested in doing like a vintage, swap meet kind of. So maybe reaching out to some of our local businesses and see if there's a potential partnership there that could take up some, visual space and also bring in that marketing.
Mhm.
And then the last one, was I would want to see some type of streamlined approval process for local vendors who would want to participate. So I think just being really mindful of that might be the one time a year that somebody does participate, or maybe like helping either like that one vintage shop or Made in Milwaukee to host an area, but then allowing local crafters or creators to be kind of set up in there. And then I guess, I'm also kind of wondering what the location is that you're proposing. That was a lot.
Love all the ideas, and thank you very much. And then on terms of the location, I mean, Dan can correct me, but we're kind of thinking similar space in which Umbrella Parade takes part, I believe, kind of plaza towards Historic City Hall. Is that right, Dan?
I think that's what we've discussed. We've also, Emma talked about ideas around Milwaukie Bay Park and opportunities there. I think to your question, Councillor Stavenjord, I would just say that's one of the great things about moving this into the downtown core, where we have in the past tried to coordinate with neighborhood businesses. It's they're on the east side. The density is just lower. So if you have one or two businesses that just aren't able to participate on a given Carefree Sunday, that they're not able to come out and do catering, they're not able to come out and sell their wares, then all of a sudden we run into this problem with all right, well gosh, now I guess we've got to shop around outside of the city. As Councillor Khosrowbadi was saying, if we are able to help some of our food carts, if we are able to help some of these other downtown businesses, I think it's a great opportunity. And absolutely, I mean, we'd be looking for ways to incorporate them.
Yeah, thank you. I was just kind of thinking about Milwaukie Marketplace and, maybe liberating that big parking lot to create kind of a central location that doesn't have a lot of hazards for folks who would be biking, especially with small children. But I absolutely understand, the need to support the businesses that are in the downtown corridor, where they'd just be able to kind of open up their doors and staff something versus relocating. It is a challenge, though, I would say, that it's the placemaking of downtown, but then also the need to be able to do that same sort of placemaking investment on the east or the north side.
Absolutely.
I will, yeah, that's a good segue to some of my thoughts about this. I'm really surprised about this idea of bringing back Milwaukie Days. When like 6 or 8 years ago, we heard it a lot. I talked to several people at different points in time and said, hey, if you want to bring together some volunteers to bring back Milwaukie Days, I'm sure the city will facilitate that and help you with permits, et cetera. And nobody's ever wanted to do it. So yes, people may say they want it, but nobody it was the Historic Milwaukie Neighborhoods event, largely Ed Zumwalt's event, and a lesser degree the Downtown Businesses event, and nobody's wanted to bring it back. So it's kind of interesting to me that staff has landed upon this. I do think the beauty of the Carefree Sundays is that it's something that happens on the east side of town, and it's something that connects some of our parks, and it could be re-envisioned to have the parks be culturally specific sites. The idea of multicultural celebrations tying into different ethnic communities and their celebrations. So I mean, I do think yeah, I share the concern about something that is just about downtown.
Mhm.
I still think the uh the weather, the weather issue is an issue with a summer event. I would almost rather see us just do 4 nights of concerts in Milwaukee Bay Park with food vendors and have a little bit of an event around sort of what NCPRD has done the last couple of summers, but with more built around it, and maybe using the farmers market parking lot or for a separate fair kind of thing or something. But I guess I'm a little concerned about I'm concerned about giving up Carefree Sundays. I think we haven't given it a fair chance because we keep making them fewer and farther between. We haven't really done them in a way that allows for fundraising to work, to have a really viable fundraising capacity there. I didn't realize we had settled on September. I thought we had settled on May, but I do like September for it. I would even like probably September for this event, to be honest. So I guess, yeah, I have my qualms about going this route personally. But yeah.
I appreciate all of this input, all of this feedback. And I specifically on the East and West thing, we've definitely talked about that too. And it's one of the things that we flagged as a risk. We don't want to hide that fact. We did feel when we were putting this kind of proposal together that downtown and waterfront focus really lends itself for this event. But then, the additional funding it might free up for supporting other events, really ensuring that is focused east of 224. But again, I just all of this makes really good sense. And I think the tricky position we're in is we just need to know if we should be building a biennial budget that that focuses on that allocates that 43,000 for Carefree, or look to do something else.
Counselor Khosrowbadi?
Yeah, sorry, just real quick. I just want to thank you for having the discussion on the West and East. Because that part, yeah, that's a good reminder that it does take that away. But I also look at the increased funding as a way to bring some of those cultural events to this side of town as well. And just that increased funding in general could help, maybe put on more events that can be held somewhere on this side of town, potentially. But yeah, that is something to consider, definitely. But again, the funding mechanism is there to support that.
And I also just want to thank you, Counselor. And I just want to say too that I also really hear you, Mayor, on the fundraising piece. I think the other constraint that I haven't talked about today is that we do have Dan wears many hats. He's an events and emergency management coordinator. We are looking more about how our entire team can kind of get behind and support this, and we can lean on some others to help with fundraising pieces. But I just want to emphasize that it's not for lack of desire on our part. It's we're trying to just be really transparent about the resources that we have and deliver what you want and what you want to see. And so I know we've gone way over. I know our poor engineers are like, please, can we get to the CIP update? Do we have direction?
Well, I think I'm hearing the majority saying they want to go this way and not do Carefree Sunday anymore. I do think that not having had a wider conversation about the community about that troubles me. And I don't agree with that personally. I would stick with Carefree Sunday, and I do think it's troubling that we're not having a wider conversation with the community about that, because we've led people to believe it's coming back. Is your hand up again, Counselor Khosrowbadi, or is that from before?
No, it's up again, Mayor. I was just gonna, because yeah, that you bring up a good point. I don't know if I would feel comfortable just pulling the rug underneath Carefree Sunday for this year. Maybe continue with Carefree Sunday because that's what we planned on, and that's what the public may be expecting. and then do a outreach to see how the public would respond to bringing back Milwaukie Days. I just, unless we can do that in the same amount of time between now and the time, but I don't know if that's possible, because I would like to, I would much rather feel comfortable about this decision with public involved as opposed to unilaterally making that.
Counselor Stavengerd?
Yeah, I apologize. I've been wrapped up in weather response and have not had a chance to do outreach since receiving the packet. But I'm wondering, what do we lose in project planning if we wait on this decision until the 6th, until our next meeting? What's compromised in the planning timeline as far as get started tomorrow approach?
Dan, let me know if you disagree. I think it just makes the timeline tighter, but I think it doesn't. I hear your concerns. I think we could we could really just set our minds on doing outreach, coming back to you on the 6th with what we've heard and asking the question again. I think at that point, though, we do both for budget timeline, because we have to get our budget submitted. And 2, we have to get a contract in motion ASAP for Carefree if we're going that route. Dan, do you disagree? Are we okay? That would be okay.
Okay,
It
so
would, yes. Oh, pardon me, Counselor.
no, I apologize. I stepped on you. So I think if we could add just a very short recap for the meeting on the 6th, that would give us a chance to do some more outreach to folks too. And I think that it is on it's our responsibility also just to speak with our constituents about this. It is a big change, but I see the advantage of also having something that happens every year and increased multicultural events, because then the frequency of those events, give more of a sense of place than something that we're doing every other year, becomes a little bit disjointed. So, but I really would like to spend just a little bit of time talking with folks who advocated for Carefree when we went through the first round. So if you're all okay with that, I'd prefer that we just revisit this very briefly on the 6th.
That sounds great to me.
We'll see you then.
Looks like we have a consensus on that. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And actually, Mayor, before we keep going, I just want to clarify. If we want community feedback, we may also want to put this on the regular session instead of the work session. So we will put it later on the 6th that evening instead of during the work session. Thanks.
And I think it'd be great to put something on Engage Milwaukie about
Sure.
it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So sorry, folks, we're way behind, but we have, and I think a lot of, there's a lot of substance here to cover. So Jennifer Garbely, our city engineer, and Jeff Tolentino, assistant city engineer, on our capital improvement plan.
Hi all, so we're going to go through all of our slides, and then if we have any time left over, we'll take questions because there's a lot to get through. So I want to make sure I get through at least everything I've got to say. First of all, though, this is Jeff Tolentino, our new assistant city engineer.
Hi, everyone. I've been really excited about working for the city. I started in April. I was just promoted into assistant city engineer in December, and we've got a great staff here, great projects, and great council, great people. So thanks for having me.
All right, can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Perfect. You guys, but there we go. All right, let's jump in. Jeff, do you want to start us off with?
Yep. Yep. So we're going to go pretty quick through here. This is the Meek Street North project. Meek Street is primarily a storm drain project. It was split into 2 phases, Meek Street South and Meek Street North. South was constructed in 2021. I believe it was finished in 2021. And so now we're getting into the north phase project. It's 36 and 42-inch diameter storm drain pipe that essentially runs from Harrison Street north to the Roswell Detention Facility along the Union Pacific corridor. We brought on a contractor in the summer, Tapany. They have started up construction in just this last November. Although things have been pretty slow out there, there's a fair amount of railroad coordination that they are negotiating through, getting safety flaggers and construction observations out there. But they have mobilized, they have stockpiled a fair amount of material, and the city on our side, we've been reaching out to residents and the Ardenwald NDA to kind of give them a heads up on what the impacts are and what they might be seeing as machinery shows up behind their fences and whatnot. So that's Meek Street North. I think we're looking at finishing up towards the end of the summer.
Yes, and just to
go ahead.
say, when they do start actually putting in pipe, they're gonna start moving pretty quickly. So right now, we're just waiting for proper approval from the railroad, as they were required to have special railroad flaggers on site.
Correct. Next slide.
I'm trying.
Oh, sorry.
It's not moving. Okay, wait, let's see if that works. There we go.
Okay, 2024 street maintenance projects. There's a few different layers to the slide here. I should note, I believe Mayor Beatty asked, what is the difference between the 2023 street maintenance project that was listed in the staff report and the 2024 street maintenance project? They're essentially the same things. It's just doing street maintenance, and so that largely entails grind and inlay projects, and then crack seal and slurry seal, crack seal, slurry seal component. So the 2023 project has largely wrapped. There's I think just a little bit of, there's just kind of some closeout stuff going on the 2023 project. 2024 project is largely in design right now. We have staff who have been assessing our road network, counting up cracks in our roadways, comparing it to how much area of roadway there is. So kind of the density of damage or cracking that's occurred in our streets. The stuff that the streets that are moderately cracked, lightly to moderately cracked, those are getting slated for crack seal. And then slurry seal, which basically just kind of covers the whole street with a kind of a black slurry, just to kind of clean up the roadway. And then the stuff that is more cracked or damaged are getting slated for grind and inlay. So they would be removing asphalt and then laying back down fresh layer of asphalt. These projects encompass lots of different roads throughout the city. And this kind of happens every year, but we just look at the most impacted neighborhoods, roadways that are used most. So if it's like a small collector street, it might not be prioritized as much as something that's just used more. So as I was mentioning earlier, the design for the current projects are kind of, they're happening now. They were kicked off just last fall. There should be actual like construction of these projects occurring in the summertime when weather's nice and it's just easier to do roadway work.
We will be reassembling that list right now and working with Public Works and coordination. So I believe we're planning to come back in April to give an SSMP and safe update. So I'll know a little bit more what streets we're going to actually be impacting. And but I do have a good amount of funds that I would like to use. So we're looking at about $1 million to put towards grind and inlay, and then 250 to $500,000 towards slurry seal this year.
I'm sorry, you said $1 million for Grindon and Lake?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, Monroe Greenway is also is another one of our projects. This one is has been getting a lot of attention just because it's a Greenway project. I think people are excited about active transportation in Milwaukie. And this one just cuts across pretty much the entire east-west length of our town. We've been very busy on the East Monroe Greenway portion of this. This project is really split into three. There's East Monroe, there's Central Monroe Greenway, and then there's West Monroe Greenway. East Monroe Greenway, again, has been the most active recently. The design was kicked off just earlier this month on the 5th. We've selected Constor for that. Central Monroe Greenway section has largely been in ODOT hands. They're working on some rail coordination and a water pipeline that will go under 224. The last part of this, West Monroe Greenway, is currently underfunded. So there's been no activity on that side. I think everyone on the team has been excited about the East Monroe Greenway portion. That'll get a bike ped path, as well as some traffic calming down the corridor there, the Monroe corridor.
Just to clarify, the water pipeline that's going to be replaced under 224 will actually be done by our staff, and we will hire the contractor. This helps us because they are federally funding the other portion of the project, which means we'd add cost to the project. So we are planning, that design is underway right now, and we plan to actually install that this fall. After summer, so we can shut down certain areas and not impact getting water to the other side of 224.
And
I just wanted to thank you to the staff for all the work with ODOT. We did sign this agreement today.
all right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Washington area improvements. We are getting really close to start construction full bore. Contractor has been getting staging area identified. It looks like they're going to be using part of the Coho site, which has been a little bit of a work to get that underway and under a contract. But I would say late January, early February, they're going to actually start picking things up and start moving, which is exciting. Harvey Street improvements. We've received 30% design. We are working towards 60% design. Brandon is going to be having an open house January 31st this month. It's on a Wednesday at the community room at City Hall, starting at 5 and going till 6:30. So if anyone wants to join, you're more than welcome. Remember, on this project, we reached out and did a survey to the community, and the community said, hey, we want sidewalk only on one side and to preserve parking on one side instead of having sidewalks on both sides of Harvey. So we are honoring that. And that's what is going to be shown in that open house on January 31st. We're anticipating construction to start in fiscal year 2025. Barnwell North improvements. We are getting close. The hard part is, I think, it's been staff capacity. So since we're hiring another person to fill Jeff's old position, I believe I'd like to sign on this project to actually get it moving to construction, finish the pre-bid documents, and move it forward. So it's kind of been in a little bit of a holding pattern. And at this time, we do have RAFA dollars that are part of it, which means we need to have them obligated and have a contract underway by the end of this year. So this does need to move forward. But I think there's just been a little bit of a capacity issue with staff being overloaded. So we're getting close.
All right. Our next project is the Waverly Heights Sewer Reconfiguration Project. And I believe Mayor Beatty asked about a second Waverly project that the city is working on. There, we actually have two. So there's this project, which is largely a wastewater collection system repair project. And then on the next slide, I'll show you in a sec, that's the Waverly South project. And that is a combination of some roadway repair, a small section of sewer, and a small improvement to water. But that's the difference between the two projects here. They're in the same neighborhood, but we're really just running them as two separate projects for here. So Waverly Heights Sewer Reconfiguration Project, this has been on the CIP for many years. We've finally been able to get it moving this last year in 2023. We're repairing a number of pipes that have shown deficiencies in the collection system. So some of this is root intrusion, some of this is just old clay pipe that is starting to collapse. There's even areas where homeowners have tried to do repairs on their fence and punctured the pipes. They were repaired, but this is an opportunity to go back and kind of do some cleanup. This is an unusual area in that most of the collection system resides not in right-of-way, but in people's backyards. So there's a very large component of trying to reduce impacts to residents on this project. We're mostly going to be looking at trenchless technologies wherever we can. So that's typically like pipe bursting, or what's called CIPP, cured in place pipe. There may be areas where we do have to trench and repair, and those will just ideally be the most impacted, the most deficient sections of pipe, and ideally in places that have very low impact to residents. This project was kicked off for design this last fall in 2023. Our consultant, Stantec, is currently just looking through what deficiencies reside in the system now, and trying to evaluate what the best approach should be, whether it's CIPP or pipe bursting, or maybe a trench and replace. We've also spent a fair amount of time just letting residents know about this project, the impacts that might occur for them, as well as getting some permit of entry, getting signed off on permit of entry forms for a number of residents out there. Design is anticipated to go through October of this year, 2024. Procurement will happen late 2024, early 2025, and we're hoping to go to construction sometime between February of 2025 and June of 2025.
We're also receiving funds from WES on this project. We're getting about 33% of this paid because it is an I&I problem. So, which is great.
Yep. This, as I mentioned earlier, is the other Waverly project that we have on our docket, Waverly South. This slide actually combines both of those projects, or this project, with another small project known as 26th Avenue improvements. So I'll start with the goals for Waverly South. We're repaving essentially Lava Drive and Waverly Court, doing some ADA ramp upgrades. There's again a small section of deteriorated sewer line that we're repairing, as well as an upsize to a 2-inch water line that runs, I don't remember the name of that street, but it's I guess it's Riverway Drive, to the very south of this neighborhood. 26th Avenue, we're repaving part of 26th Avenue from Lake Road to the end of 26th, as well as adding new sidewalk there. Both of these projects were just kicked off. They're essentially like kicking off now, like this month. Design should go through April of this year. Procurement between May and June of 2024, and then construction this summer, August 2024 through September 2024.
So 26th Avenue is between Lake Road and the creek, basically?
Yeah, where it dead ends. It dead ends into the apartment complex.
Okay. Okay.
So
thank
yes.
you.
And because of these projects are fairly small, first of all, we're designing them in-house. But because of the size of them, I combined them to be one, to go out to bid as one project to be more efficient for managing that contract. So.
ADA ramp improvements. This project installs 14 new ADA compliant ramps throughout Milwaukee. So some of these are downtown, some of these are in various residential parts of town. We selected a contractor in fall of last year, MJ Hughes, and we're anticipating construction to start up very soon here. I think there's just been some minor things that Hector has been working out with the contractor, but we're looking at the next few weeks for that to start kicking on.
Contractors looking to have a kickoff meeting end of the month, which is exciting. We are going to be receiving $145,000 from Clackamas County to support this project, which is why it has been moving forward. All right, downtown sidewalk and storm. So this project is between Monroe and Jefferson. We're not repairing the entire block of sidewalk. It is a section. And this is where we've had some major uplift of the sidewalk. So we are identifying, removing the trees, putting in new tree wells, using a new system to allow the trees to grow underneath the sidewalk, and using a porous concrete so water can actually drain and water those trees. In addition, though, this system, you can't just drain all of that water without having an under drain system that connects to our storm system. So the other piece of this project is updating our storm system within that block to be able to take that water and the excess water from that sidewalk, tie it into our storm system and move it along. So right now they have 90% comments that the designer is working on 100%. I also hope to do our medallions also with this project, which Hector is working on to get them purchased. So I'm hoping to include that within this project, and we can button up the four corners at Washington, and then also start demonstrating and doing this pilot study of new trees and tree wells in this area. King Road improvements. All right, we've finished the survey. We've gotten to a 30% design. We've had an open house in November. The biggest conflict we've identified is our stormwater. So the design consultant has come back and said, hey, most of your dry wells are failing on King Road. So right now we are looking at additional information to see what it takes to either fix or solve our stormwater issue on King Road. We don't have a ton of actual flooding on King Road, but I believe that's because a lot of it is running off the side streets and flooding our side streets. So we will be gathering a little bit more information before I move on to 60% and get too far down the line. And so I have a little bit more information on what the cost is going to be and repairing that portion of the work.
Can you clarify what it means that a dry well is failing?
It's not actual infiltrating water anymore. So you can't send it any more water. So the water is going elsewhere, right? You're going to start backing up. If it's not infiltrating water, then you have a useless dry well. So it might be the fact that it just needs to be really cleaned out, or maybe it could be drilled bigger. Maybe we need a whole new one, or maybe we need to look at a completely new system because our soils aren't actually appropriate for taking on infiltrating water. So we are digging into that information a little bit more to see what's the best possible option for us. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Kellogg Creek Restoration Project. This is another very high profile project. And many of you are probably have been aware of this one. This project will essentially convert what is now like a small lake that is along Kellogg Creek, just east of McLaughlin, back to its original the original like creek alignment. So you may have seen the dam that is below McLaughlin. If you're in Milwaukie Bay Park, you can see the fish ladder and there's a dam there. That dam is integral to the bridge. ODOT is going to replace that bridge. And as part of that, we'll be able to remove the dam, and that'll essentially help us restore the creek there. So
ODOT.
there's a,
Sorry,
was
Jeff.
there a question?
Nope, sorry, Jeff.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So that dam will be removed, and the creek will go back to its original alignment. And there will be some revegetation and removal of sediment that's accumulated in the I don't know what you call it, pond or lake there. An RFQ is scheduled to go out either at the end of this month or beginning of February. I think everyone's been excited about this project.
Which ODOT is running. So this process is running through ODOT.
Next slide. Locust Road, 40th and 42nd Avenue improvements. This is another project that brings in lots of a number of different utilities. Most of it is a roadway repair project or roadway improvements. So repaving on Locust Road between 43rd and 49th. Repaving 40th between Harvey and King, and repaving 42nd between King and I believe this is Monroe. So there's like 4 blocks there on 42nd. There's also some water and sewer improvements that we're doing at Drake and 38th, as well as some water improvements along King Road. This project has largely been in the planning phase. We're looking at doing an RFQ later this winter or early spring of 2024.
So the one concern I do have with this project is we've evaluated the intersection at 42nd and Harrison. It does come back as, I mean, we could put in a signal or we can put in a roundabout. The problem is I don't have funding for either of those options. So I'm probably looking at finding additional funds or grants outside to support rebuilding that intersection, which means I could probably get through design, but we might not be able to go to construction of the section on 42nd Street if we don't identify the funds to support that intersection improvements. So we'll be circling back on that a little bit more as we get closer. The next project I want to talk about is
just one clarifying
Sure.
question there. The sidewalks on Locust will now connect from 43rd to the existing sidewalks on Locust. Is that correct?
That's the intent, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think we could probably get away with one sidewalk on that stretch of Locust, similar to what is just east on the easter, the more east end of Locust. And so that'll allow parking on the north side of the road and walkways for sidewalk for kids and young people to get to school.
All right, so now we're going to talk about Stanley improvements. We were approached by the county. They have some URA funds that they potentially would like to be able to use. The hard part is the boundary for their URA doesn't include everything from Johnson Creek to King Road. There is a section kind of in the middle that's not included, which means we have to cover that. We also are putting out our Safe Routes to School grant, which is great. But basically, to fulfill this project, I need both of those things to come through. So one of the bigger questions is, what happens if one doesn't come through? Then how are we going to pay for this? So it's something we need to consider, because I may have to decline moving this project forward or shift the Logos and 40th, 42nd project in order to actually fulfill this project. So I will be looking for council for some guidance on preferences as far as that goes. The idea would be to install sidewalk at least on one side, all the way from King to Johnson Creek, which would tie into out the what's that path? Springwater Corridor. The county would like to move forward with the design and then hope to have construction completed within 3 years. We're still working on an IGA, nothing's been signed, and we're still getting ready to submit an application for the safe routes to school. So we've got a lot to talk about as far as that goes, but I would like to have a feeling if council would, if we didn't receive either the county funds or the safe routes to school grant, how would they feel about delaying Logos, 40th and 42nd? Or do we keep on the 40th, 42nd path and this project kind of goes away until we find additional funding? So think about that.
Is it okay?
Sure. I think I've got one more slide after this. We're done.
Okay.
So go ahead. Okay. Water engineering services. All right. So we are ramping up. I haven't had a kickoff yet because we're still getting the contracts signed and things like that. That's kind of what I'm working on this month. This slide is really set up for what's going to be set up for kind of our next CIP. We definitely want to look at well number 8. Right now it's offline. We want to get it online so we have the capacity of that well. Our first objection is to, let's see if we can clean it. Let's see if we can get that cleaned and getting it operational. If not, then we'll have to look at maybe re-drilling the well in a new location. Then we've got our water treatment plant improvements. Some of the major things that need to happen is a transfer pump upgrades, electrical system to code. And then we really need to do a condition assessment of both water treatment plants so we can understand what is it we really need to do and what needs to be upgraded. Those are kind of the first initial steps we're going to be looking at before we even jump into any type of design. Then we have our concrete tank improvements. The concrete tank is the one at 40th and Harvey. It needs a new liner. This reservoir is 100 years old, and it needs some seismic upgrades. So super important, we identify those, we move it forward and protect that reservoir as much as possible. And then we've got our new reservoir. We need to find a location, we need to evaluate the city's 4 pressure zones, and then we needed to design an actual new reservoir. So these are kind of the elements we'll be focusing on in the next CIP. Questions?
Councilor George, you wanted to weigh in on the Logos versus, I guess I feel like we need a little more information on Logos, on prioritizing those two. But anyway, that is your neighborhood, so maybe you have a view.
Yeah, I actually just had a question, not a recommendation at this point. The community partners that are helping with some of that safe routes to school work, have they been briefed on this dilemma, and do they have recommendations?
They've been notified that we might get additional funding, which is great. So that's exciting about it. This is me more being nervous if I don't get one funding or the other. So
sure. Yeah, no, I understand that. I feel like the funding dictates the priority on this, you know, and that's been the origin of that project. You know, there's a need that was brought forward by community members. They went out and they sought funding. It required the partnership of the city, which is important. And I really appreciate that we've been able to support that work. But if that funding, if that external funding goes away, then I think that the responsibility falls back on the community partners to at least problem solve for funding sources. And if they have other suggestions, then I think that that would be helpful for council to hear.
Counselor, may I jump in for just 1 second? A couple of things. I did meet with Stefan Lashbrook on Friday last week. He was aware generally that this might be a problem. He knew that the money may not be coming in. He wasn't sure what the specifics were. I also just wanted to make sure it's clear, there is not a match requirement for the Safe Routes money. It's not a part of the grant for this year. It has been in the past, and it has given us additional points in the past. That is not the case this year as far as it's designed today, but it's still getting revamped. So it's possible that could shift again. Just wanted to make sure you had both of those pieces of info.
And I mean, we had information back in the summer that sounded like we were in great shape in terms of the points and where we would rank in the hierarchy of projects. Is that not really the case anymore?
I would say, I mean, that those things are all still true, but I'm not on that selection committee to say where they're going to be thinking. So if we receive the Safe Routes to School grant, all those things can move forward. Those would move forward in that sense. Just tying it together with this county may not work. So we'll see.
All right, is there something more you needed from us on that?
I think I'm fine for right now. I'll probably come back to you as I get more information.
Did other people have questions that popped up while they were going through that? I mean, we can take a few minutes to ask questions, and we'll just start at 10 minutes late so that people do have some time for a dinner break. Nobody had any questions on any of the CIP projects? I guess I had one, which was on the Meek North. Does that include any? I mean, we've had conversations over the years about trying to make Roswell Ponds more publicly accessible as a green space. Is any of that kind of work being in that project, or is that for a later date?
That is not included in the project. We're essentially connecting, I believe, to the manhole right before the Roswell Pond, but there's no active work as part of the Meek Street North project to change the Roswell Pond at all. We're constructing a new pond kind of halfway down the alignment of the project at the end of Balfour Street, but that's going to be also closed to the public. It'll be fenced off.
But it will be like vegetated with native vegetation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the concern about Roswell is once upon a time it was native vegetation and it's not maybe so much anymore, I guess. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, that was very informative. You did it really well and in a short period of time. So we appreciate you getting through that. If no other questions, we'll take a break and we'll reconvene at like 10 after 6. Okay. All right. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.